At dinner, she did it. My own daughter-in-law stood up, looked me straight in the eyes, and threw a glass of red wine across the table. It hit my face cold at first, then burning. The laughter that followed was louder than the impact. "You're just a maid," she said, as my son sat there in silence. I sat frozen, humiliated, trembling in front of my own family, my dignity dripping down my skin with the wine she spilled. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I washed my face in silence and I prayed. Because what she didn't know was that by sunrise, the same table where she mocked me would become the altar of her own downfall. Before I continue, please like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Every mother who's ever been silenced deserves to be heard, and tonight, I want you to hear this story till the very end. You think you know what humiliation feels like? You think you understand the burn of injustice? Let me tell you about the night my soul was set on fire, and how that fire became the torch that lit the way to justice. I had spent 3 hours preparing that dinner. 3 hours of my life poured into making something beautiful for my family. The roast was my son's favorite, the same recipe I'd made for him since he was 7 years old, coming home from school with scraped knees and stories that tumbled out faster than he could speak them. I thought, God help me, I thought love could soften the distance that had grown between us. The table was set with my grandmother's china, the plates that survived 2 wars, 3 generations, and more family gatherings than I could count. The candles flickered like tiny prayers, casting warm light across the dining room where I had fed my family for 37 years. I believed in that moment that peace was possible, that we could sit together as a family should, breaking bread instead of breaking hearts. But peace was not what walked through my door that evening. She entered late, as always. Her heels clicked against my hardwood floors like bullets being loaded into a chamber. The sound alone made my chest tighten with dread. She didn't apologize for being late. She never apologized for anything. Instead, she complained about traffic, about her job, about the weather, about everything except her own choices that led to her tardiness. She poured herself wine before she even sat down. Not a small glass, no, she filled it to the brim like she was preparing for battle. And maybe she was. Maybe in her mind, every family dinner was a conquest, every conversation a chance to establish her dominance over the woman who had given birth to her husband. I watched her settle into the chair that used to be my husband's, God rest his soul, and I felt something cold settle in my stomach. The way she looked around the room, like she was surveying territory she planned to claim. The way her eyes dismissed the effort I had put into making everything perfect, as if my love was just another inconvenience in her evening. "This smells adequate," she said, cutting into the roast I had labored over. Not good. Not delicious. Adequate. Like I was some hired help whose efforts deserved only the faintest acknowledgement. My son, my beautiful boy who once brought me dandelions and called them flowers, said nothing. He carved his meat in silence, his eyes fixed on his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. When did he learn to disappear like that? When did he master the art of becoming invisible in his own mother's home? "You know, Mother," she continued, the word dripping from her tongue like poison disguised as honey, "you really should consider hiring actual help. This is quite a lot of work for someone your age." My age. As if the years I had lived, the wisdom I had earned, the love I had given, as if all of that was just a countdown to irrelevance. As if the hands that had changed her husband's diapers, held him through fever nights, and taught him to tie his shoes were now too old to prepare a meal with love. I forced a smile. "I enjoy cooking for my family." "Family," she repeated and laughed. It wasn't a warm laugh. It was the kind of laugh that cuts glass. Yes, well, we all have our hobbies. Hobbies. 37 years of devotion reduced to a hobby. The conversation continued like this, her words sharp as razors, my responses careful as a diplomat walking through a minefield. She spoke about her work, her achievements, her plans for renovating houses that weren't even hers yet. She spoke about everything except the people sitting at the table with her. When I offered her more wine, she waved me away. I can pour my own drinks. I'm not helpless. But when I tried to clear the plates, she stopped me with a gesture that felt like a slap. Actually, Mother, there's something I've been meaning to discuss with you. The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade, waiting to fall. My son's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Even he could sense what was coming. We've been thinking, she said, though we both knew she meant I've been thinking, that it might be time for you to consider other living arrangements. Other living arrangements. In the house where I had raised my son. In the home where my husband had drawn his last breath. In the place where every wall held memories and every room whispered stories of the life I had built with my own hands. This house is getting to be too much for you, she continued, her voice taking on that false sweetness that people use when they're about to destroy your world. And frankly, we need the space. We're planning to start a family soon, and we'll need room for a nursery, maybe a nanny's quarters. A nanny. She wanted to hire a stranger to love her children while pushing away the woman who had perfected the art of love over decades of practice. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, not yet, but crack, like ice forming on a pond. This is my home, I said quietly. Well, technically, she smiled. It's your son's home now. Isn't that right, honey? She turned to him with that smile, the one she wore when she wanted him to choose her over everyone else in the world. And God forgive me, for a moment I thought he might. For a moment I thought 37 years of love might crumble under the weight of whatever spell she had cast over him. But he surprised me. We don't need to discuss this tonight, he said. Her smile faltered. Just for a second, but I saw it. I saw the crack in her perfect mask, and something dark and ugly peeked through. Of course we do, she said, her voice sharpening. Your mother needs to understand that things are changing. That she can't just cling to the past forever. Cling to the past. As if love was just nostalgia. As if the bonds between a mother and child were just old habits that needed breaking. I've given my life to this family, I said, and my voice was steady even though my hands were shaking. I've loved you both with everything I have. Love, she said, and there was that laugh again. You call this love? This hovering? This constant need to be needed? You're not his mother anymore, you're his burden. The words hit me like physical blows. I felt each one land, felt the pain bloom in my chest like flowers made of fire. That's enough, my son said, but his voice was weak, uncertain. No, it's not enough, she snapped, turning on him now. I'm tired of tiptoeing around her feelings. I'm tired of pretending that her cooking and cleaning and constant presence is anything more than what it is, desperation. She's desperate to matter, desperate to be important, desperate to pretend that she's anything more than a maid in her own son's house. A maid. She called me a maid. 37 years of sacrifice, of love, of devotion. Reduced to hired help in my own home. I stood up slowly. My legs felt unsteady, but my resolve was crystallizing into something harder than diamond. I think you should leave, I said. Oh, I'll leave, she said, rising to her feet like a queen dismissing a servant. But not before you understand exactly what your place is in this family. That's when she did it. That's when she picked up her glass of wine, my grandmother's crystal glass, filled with wine I had bought to make her feel welcome, and she threw it. The wine hit my face like a baptism of humiliation. Cold at first, then burning as it ran down my cheeks, staining my blouse, dripping onto the floor where my children had taken their first steps. The glass shattered against the wall behind me, pieces of crystal scattering like the fragments of my dignity. You're just a maid, she said again, her voice cutting through the silence that followed. And it's time you learned to act like one. The laughter came from her throat like something being born from hell itself. It filled the room, bounced off the walls, echoed in the spaces where love used to live. And my son, my beautiful boy, he sat there in silence. I stood there, wine dripping from my face, crystal at my feet, and I felt something die inside me. Not love, love doesn't die that easily. but trust, hope, the belief that goodness would be rewarded, that devotion would be honored, that a mother's love would be protected by the child who had received it. I didn't scream. I didn't curse. I didn't throw anything back at her, though God knows my hands itched to do it. Instead, I walked to the kitchen, my footsteps careful to avoid the broken glass, and I picked up a dish towel. I washed my face in silence. The water was cold against my skin, washing away the wine but not the humiliation. In the mirror above the sink, I saw a woman I barely recognized, older than I remembered, more tired than I wanted to admit, but with eyes that held something new. Something that hadn't been there before dinner. I prayed that night. Not for forgiveness, she didn't deserve that yet. Not for peace, there could be no peace without justice. I prayed for strength, for wisdom, for the courage to do what needed to be done. Because what she didn't know, what neither of them knew, was that by sunrise, everything would change. I sat at that table where it happened, long after they had gone to bed. The dining room was quiet now, peaceful in a way it hadn't been for hours. I could still smell the wine in the air, could still see the stain on the wall where the glass had shattered. But instead of feeling defeated, I felt awakened. You see, there's something about being broken that clears your vision. When someone strips away your dignity, when they reduce you to nothing in front of the people you love most, it's like having scales fall from your eyes. You see things as they really are, not as you hoped they would be. I saw my son's silence for what it was, not confusion, but cowardice. I saw her cruelty for what it was, not just meanness, but evil. And I saw myself for what I had become, not a beloved mother, but a woman who had forgotten her own worth in the desperate pursuit of keeping peace. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. I moved through my house like a ghost, gathering evidence of the evening's events. The broken glass went into a bag, carefully collected, each piece a witness to what she had done. The dish towel, stained with wine and the salt of tears I hadn't let myself cry, that went into another bag. I took photographs of the wall where the wine had splattered, of the stain on my blouse, of my face with its red marks where the glass had cut me. Some might call it obsessive. I call it thorough. I documented everything because I had learned something that night. When someone shows you who they really are, you should believe them. And you should be prepared to prove it. As dawn approached, I made coffee. Not because I needed the caffeine, my body was running on something much stronger than caffeine now. I made it because the ritual grounded me, reminded me who I was. I was a woman who had made coffee every morning for 37 years, who had started each day with the simple act of service to her family. But this morning would be different. This morning, I would serve something else entirely. When she came downstairs, hungover and smug, I was ready for her. "Good morning," I said, my voice calm as still water. She grunted something that might have been a greeting and poured herself coffee from the pot I had made. She didn't thank me. She never thanked me for anything. I slid an envelope across the table. White paper, crisp edges, her name written in my careful handwriting across the front. "What's this?" she asked, tearing it open with the casual disregard she showed for everything that came from me. I watched her face change as she read. Watched the smugness drain away like color bleeding from fabric. Watched her eyes widen, then narrow, then fill with something I had never seen there before: fear. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. Inside that envelope were copies of bank statements, loan applications, credit card bills, all bearing her signature, all showing debts she had hidden from my son. Debts that had been accumulating for months, growing like cancer in the dark spaces of her secret life. You see, while she had been treating me like hired help, I had been doing what any good housekeeper does. I had been paying attention. I had noticed the second phone she kept hidden, the mail she intercepted before my son could see it, the way she always paid for expensive dinners with cash she claimed came from work bonuses that never seemed to appear on her pay stubs. When someone reduces you to the help, they forget that the help sees everything. "Yesterday you called me a maid," I said, my voice steady as stone. "Today the maid owns the house you stand in." She tried to laugh, but it came out strangled. You can't prove anything. I slid another paper across the table. This one was a property deed, one she had signed without my son's knowledge, using his identity to take out a second mortgage on my home. The home she had told me I needed to leave because they needed space. Your signature is very distinctive, I said. Almost artistic, really. Especially on legal documents. Her face went white. Actually white, like all the blood had suddenly decided to abandon ship. You don't understand. I understand perfectly, I said. You've been stealing from my son. From my family. While pretending to love him, you've been destroying him piece by piece, bill by bill, lie by lie. That's when my son walked into the kitchen. He looked tired, older than his years, worn down by the weight of trying to keep peace between two women who were never going to coexist peacefully. What's going on? He asked, looking between us. I handed him the papers. All of them. Every document, every receipt, every piece of evidence I had gathered. Your wife has something to tell you. He read in silence, his face changing with each page. I watched 37 years of trust crumble in real time. Watched him realize that the woman he had married, the woman he had chosen over his own mother's warnings, had been playing a long game of destruction. Is this true? He asked her, his voice barely above a whisper. She tried to deny it. Tried to explain it away, to make it sound like investments, like smart financial planning, like anything other than what it was, theft. But the papers didn't lie. Numbers never lie. Only people lie. I can explain, she said, reaching for him. He stepped back. Away from her. Toward me. Get out, he said. Honey, please. Get out, he roared, and I saw my little boy in that roar. The child who used to hide behind my skirts when strangers came to the door, who trusted me to protect him from everything bad in the world. She left. Not quietly, not gracefully, but she left. She screamed, she threatened, she called us both names that would make sailors blush. But she left. And when she was gone, my son collapsed into the chair where she used to sit, put his head in his hands, and finally, he cried. I didn't say, I told you so. I didn't remind him of all the warnings he had ignored, all the signs he had missed. I just made him coffee and sat beside him while he grieved for the life he thought he had been living. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Mom. Love makes us blind sometimes, I said. But it also gives us the strength to see clearly when we need to. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no. Because what I learned that morning was that her debts were just the beginning. When you pull one thread of deception, the whole fabric comes unraveling. The phone calls started that afternoon. Creditors, lawyers, people looking for money she owed, services she had promised, lies she had told to get what she wanted. It turned out my daughter-in-law had been living a life of fiction, supported by theft and maintained by manipulation. The police came to the door 3 days later. Not for us, for her. It seemed that fraudulent loan applications weren't just morally wrong, they were criminally wrong. When you forge someone's name on legal documents, when you steal their identity to fund your lifestyle, when you turn love into a weapon for financial gain, that's not just cruelty. That's crime. I watched from my window as they led her away in handcuffs. The same hands that had thrown wine in my face, that had called me a maid, that had tried to steal my home, those hands were cuffed behind her back as she was loaded into a police car. Justice is a strange thing. You think you want it loud and dramatic, like thunder and lightning. But real justice comes quietly, like sunrise. It arrives not with fanfare, but with the simple restoration of truth. My son and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully, like people learning to walk again after an injury. He moved back into his childhood room, not because he had to, but because he wanted to remember who he was before she changed him. We cooked together, the way we used to when he was small, and insisted on helping even though his help made everything take twice as long. Why didn't you fight back? He asked me one evening as we did dishes together. When she threw that wine, when she called you those names, why didn't you fight back? I dried a plate slowly, thinking about my answer. Because fighting back would have made me like her, I said finally. And I spent too many years becoming who I am to throw it away in one moment of anger. But you did fight back, he said. In the end, you fought back harder than anyone. No, I said. I didn't fight back. I fought forward. There's a difference. Fighting back is about the past, about revenge, about getting even, about making someone pay for what they did to you. Fighting forward is about the future, about protecting what matters, about stopping the damage from spreading, about making sure the truth has a voice. I didn't destroy her out of hatred. I exposed her out of love for my son, love for my family, love for the home she was trying to steal. Love doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes love looks like a police report. 6 months later, she was sentenced to 18 months in prison for fraud and identity theft. The judge called her crimes a violation of the most sacred trust that between family members. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to see her face when justice was served. I had already seen everything I needed to see that night when wine dripped down my face and dignity pooled on my dining room floor. But I did something else that day. I took the crystal glass that had somehow survived her assault, one lone glass from my grandmother's set, sitting in the cabinet like a soldier who had survived a war. I filled it with wine, the same kind of wine she had thrown at me, and I toasted. Not to her downfall. That was never what this was about. I toasted to truth, to the courage it takes to document injustice, to the strength it takes to love someone enough to save them from their own blindness, to the wisdom it takes to know that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to be destroyed. You see, what she never understood was that calling me a maid wasn't an insult, it was a confession. Maids see everything. Maids know where the bodies are buried, where the secrets are hidden, where the truth lives when everyone else is too busy lying to notice it. Maids are the ones who clean up messes, who restore order, who make things right again. And that night, when she threw wine in my face and laughed at my humiliation, she created the biggest mess of her life. So yes, I was her maid. I cleaned up her mess. I restored order to my family. I made things right again. And when I was finished, there wasn't a single stain left behind. But let me tell you something about humiliation. It changes you. Not always in the ways you expect, not always in the ways that feel good, but it changes you. When someone strips away your dignity in front of the people you love most, when they reduce your life's work to a punchline, when they make you feel smaller than dust in your own home, you have two choices. You can let it break you, or you can let it remake you. I chose to be remade. The woman who sat at that dinner table, who prepared that meal with love, who hoped for peace, she was beautiful, but she was naive. She believed that goodness would be rewarded simply for being good. She believed that love would be honored simply for being love. She believed that if she made herself small enough, quiet enough, undemanding enough, she could keep her family together through sheer force of selflessness. That woman died the night wine was thrown in her face. The woman who was born in her place, she's different. She still loves, but her love has teeth now. She still serves, but she serves truth instead of illusion. She still hopes, but her hope is grounded in reality instead of wishful thinking. This new woman knows that respect is not given, it's commanded. That dignity is not granted, it's claimed. That love without boundaries is not love at all, it's surrender. I learned that night that there's a difference between keeping peace and enabling war. For years, I had kept peace by absorbing her cruelty, by making excuses for her behavior, by telling myself that love meant accepting whatever treatment I received. But what I was actually doing was enabling her to wage war against my family, against my son, against me. Real peace doesn't come from avoiding conflict, it comes from resolving it. And sometimes resolution requires exposure. Sometimes healing requires surgery. Sometimes love requires consequences. The morning after she was arrested, I went back to that dining room. I cleaned the wall where the wine had stained it, really cleaned it, with the kind of thoroughness that removes not just the visible marks, but the memory of them. I picked up every last shard of broken crystal, swept every corner, polished every surface until it gleamed. Then I set the table again. My grandmother's china, my mother's silverware, my own crystal glasses. I lit the candles, prepared a meal, and invited my son to dinner. We sat in the same chairs where it had all happened. We ate from the same plates that had witnessed my humiliation. We spoke in the same room where silence had nearly destroyed us both. But everything was different now. The food tasted better because it was seasoned with truth. The conversation flowed easier because it was built on honesty. The love between us was stronger because it had been tested by fire and had not been consumed. "Do you forgive her?" my son asked me as we finished dessert. I thought about it carefully. Forgiveness is not something to be given lightly, especially when someone has shown no remorse, no understanding of the damage they've caused, no intention of changing. "I forgive the pain she caused," I said finally, "because carrying that pain would only hurt me. But I don't forgive the choices she made, because those choices revealed who she really is. And I can't forgive someone for being themselves." "Do you forgive me?" he asked, and his voice was small, like the child he used to be. "Oh, my son," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "There's nothing to forgive. Love makes us blind sometimes. But it also gives us the courage to open our eyes when we're ready to see." Some people think forgiveness means pretending the hurt never happened. They think it means going back to the way things were, acting like nothing changed, letting the person who hurt you back into your life with open arms and no conditions. But that's not forgiveness, that's foolishness. Real forgiveness is about freeing yourself from the poison of resentment. It's about choosing not to let someone else's cruelty take up permanent residence in your heart. It's about healing the wound they gave you so it can't continue to bleed all over your life. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean trusting again. It doesn't mean opening your door to someone who has proven they will burn down your house. I forgave her because I refused to let her live rent-free in my mind for the rest of my life. I forgave her because carrying hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I forgave her because forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not a gift you give to someone who has hurt you. But I will never forget what she showed me about herself. I will never trust her again. And I will never allow her back into my life or my son's life. Because forgiveness and wisdom can coexist. Love and boundaries can dance together. Grace and consequences can walk hand in hand. That's what I learned the night she threw wine in my face and called me a maid. I learned that being a doormat is not the same as being loving. I learned that enabling someone's worst behavior is not the same as supporting them. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no, set a boundary, and let someone face the consequences of their choices. I learned that I am not responsible for other people's happiness, but I am responsible for my own dignity. I am not obligated to accept disrespect in the name of keeping peace. I am not required to set myself on fire to keep other people warm. Most importantly, I learned that my worth is not determined by how others treat me. It's determined by how I treat myself. The woman who threw wine in my face thought she was teaching me a lesson about my place in the world. And she did teach me something, just not what she intended. She taught me that my place in the world is wherever I choose to stand. She taught me that respect is not something I need to earn from others, it's something I need to give to myself. She taught me that love without self-respect is not love at all, it's self-destruction. She taught me that I am not a maid, not a servant, not a doormat to be walked on whenever someone needs to feel powerful. I am a woman who has lived, who has loved, who has sacrificed, who has given everything she had to build something beautiful in this world. And no one has the right to reduce that to rubble for their own entertainment. That morning, when I watched her being led away in handcuffs, I didn't feel vindicated. I didn't feel victorious. I felt sad for the woman she could have been if she had chosen love over cruelty, truth over deception, growth over destruction. But I also felt free. Free from the weight of trying to earn love from someone incapable of giving it. Free from the exhaustion of walking on eggshells around someone who saw my kindness as weakness. Free from the prison of believing that my worth was determined by how well I could absorb other people's pain. Some stories end with dramatic confrontations, with heroes and villains clearly defined, with justice served in spectacular fashion. But real life is messier than that. Real justice is quieter, more complicated, more human. My story ends with me, sitting in my dining room on a Sunday afternoon, sunlight streaming through windows that I have cleaned 1,000 times, surrounded by the quiet satisfaction of a life reclaimed. My son is in the kitchen, making coffee the way I taught him when he was 12 years old. The house smells like the cinnamon rolls I baked this morning, not because I had to, not because someone expected it, but because I wanted to. Because I remembered that service given freely is a gift. Service demanded is slavery. I give gifts now only to those who appreciate them. I save my love for those who cherish it. I spend my energy on people who see my worth instead of wasting it on those who are determined to diminish it. That night, she paid the price she never expected, not in gold, not in blood, but in the weight of her own actions. Pride is expensive. Humility is priceless. Tell me, if humiliation had knocked on your door, would you have stayed silent, or would you have answered with truth? Don't leave without subscribing. Your one click helps our stories reach hearts that have been silenced too long. Comment below where you're watching from, because somewhere a mother like me is listening tonight. Somewhere a woman is sitting at her kitchen table, wondering if she deserves the treatment she's receiving. Somewhere a mother is questioning whether love means accepting abuse. Somewhere a daughter-in-law is learning that kindness is not the same as weakness. And maybe, just maybe, my story will reach her in time. Maybe she'll learn what I learned, that you teach people how to treat you by what you accept. That dignity is not something you can lose unless you give it away. That the strongest people are not those who never fall, but those who know how to get back up and dust themselves off and walk forward with their heads held high. Maybe she'll learn that silence in the face of cruelty is not peace, it's surrender. That enabling someone's worst behavior is not love, it's fear. That keeping a family together by allowing one person to destroy it from within is not harmony, it's chaos. Or maybe she'll learn what my daughter-in-law learned. That actions have consequences, that truth has a voice, and that the people you think are powerless often hold more power than you realize. Either way, the story will continue. In dining rooms and kitchens and living rooms all across this world, the eternal battle between kindness and cruelty, between love and selfishness, between truth and deception will play out again and again. And every time it does, I hope the truth wins. I hope love wins. I hope dignity wins. Because that's what we're really fighting for, isn't it? Not revenge. Not victory. Not the satisfaction of watching someone else fall. We're fighting for the right to be treated with basic human respect. We're fighting for the right to give our love without having it weaponized against us. We're fighting for the right to build something beautiful without having someone else tear it down for sport. We're fighting for the right to be ourselves, flawed, imperfect, trying our best, without having to apologize for taking up space in this world. That's what I learned the night wine dripped down my face and dignity pooled on my dining room floor. That's what I remembered when I watched justice being served with handcuffs and a prison sentence. That's what I carry with me now as I move through my days with my head held high and my heart protected by the boundaries I've learned to build. I am not a maid. I am not a servant. I am not a doormat. I am a woman who has learned the difference between love and surrender, between kindness and foolishness, between forgiveness and forgetfulness. I am a woman who knows her worth. And that knowledge, that unshakable, bone-deep knowledge of my own value, is the greatest gift I ever gave myself. It's also the greatest gift I can give to you. You are not what happened to you. You are not how others treat you. You are not the sum of your mistakes or the victim of your circumstances. You are a human being deserving of respect, worthy of love, capable of dignity. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. Remember that. When the wine is flying and the laughter is cutting and the silence is deafening, remember that. You are worth more than their opinion of you. You always have been. You always will be.